So here we are with the Mocap Vaults. I'm just letting somebody else in. There we go. I might have to go through this again then. Okay, so here we are at the Mocap Vaults Ask Us Anything event. We have people from all over the world beaming in to ask their questions about Mocap Vaults. And we're going to be focusing on the Mocap Vaults, the classes, the workshops, the contents, the skills you need, what that does for you as an actor, how that fits into the mocap industry and beyond as well. We're recording this, so if you don't want your face to be shown, please disappear yourself. And any questions can be asked through the chat portal. So keep yourself muted. I have ultimate power. I can always mute you. But no, all questions through the chat function, please. Now, John is going to be the MC. He's got all your questions and some more, and I'm going to hand over to him.
Thank you, Pascal. So my name is John Dower. I'm co-founder of the Mocap Vaults. We formed the company about 7 years ago. Feels like a long time ago now, and lots changed even in that time. With me, I have Pascal Langdale, who's head of operations in Canada, and I have Richard Dorton, who's head of operations in the States, based in LA. We are about to start classes in the new year in Atlanta, so that's really exciting. We're starting to extend our reach in the US, which is great news, I think. So as Pascal said, I just want to say that we had 51 people sign up. I think we're gradually getting more. We have 41 at the moment. As you might imagine, it's going to be pretty tricky for us in the hour or so. We're aiming for an hour, but if things are really cooking, we'll go for longer. We are unlikely to get through everyone's questions in detail. So what we've tried to do is try and group the questions into the kind of questions, and then we're going to look at those in a bit more detail and try and get through all the different groups. Those groups are, so we've got something really about teaching and about what we teach and our ethos for teaching and why we teach it and what you might expect from classes. So I'll be grouping those questions into our first set of questions. We'll talk about the workshops in the context of the industry. So how those skills might relate to and specific experiences that you might find yourselves in when you're working in the volume. We will talk a little bit about where we're at with the Mocap Vaults and the pandemic and the practicalities of trying to run a curriculum and try and play catch up with the fact that we haven't been able to do classes. We weren't able to do classes for 18 months, just about 18 months. So there have been questions also about when classes will be, when there'll be a cinematics classes, when there might be a summit. We don't have all those answers, but we'll give you some ideas of why those things are quite complicated for us at the moment, particularly being able to predict when summits are. And then finally, if we've got time, we'll talk about the sort of casting process. But what always underpins the questions, when we often get asked these questions in Q&As, will be very much approach centered upon why we do these workshops in the first place, which is that we believe that mocap is a performance medium in its own right, and that it's to some extent, you might crudely say, it draws on the skills of screen acting and stage acting, and both of those are important, but it is a medium in its own right. And that's why we run classes, because we want to try and give people a sense of the orientation in which they need to make their performance and their skill set and aim it towards that. But we'll get into that in a bit more detail, and so the casting questions will come at the end. So I'm going to ask you guys, just to kick off, Pascal and Richard, just give us an idea of what a typical Mocap Vaults class looks like. What kind of activities can we expect from the workshops? I don't know if you want to kick that off, Richard. Do you want to just give an idea of what your process is, what your ethos is for the classes?
Hello, everybody. Glad to see you all. For me, what I like to do, especially like in my intro class, is for me, everything is going back to basics. I think once we get out of high school, college, all of a sudden we think we've studied and we're like, now I'm an actor. I don't need any of that. And I always start my classes by going back to basics. And that's where I think mask work is really, really important. And the physicality. So don't lose your training. Don't throw that stuff away, because it does come back to haunt you. And there also, when you go back to basics, it's the one thing that can get you out of your head. I think for me, it is, I like to keep things, because we work so fast in the volume, I like to keep things very, very simple as possible. And then once you get that base underneath you, then I think it moves a lot faster, and you can adapt that way. So for me, it's always about staying true to the basics, and not convoluting stuff that happens. So it's for those of us who have been in the business a long time, you can be, and when you train with various teachers, you get so much information overload. You have to find what works for you. And for me, that's why I teach is simplified, basic stuff. That way I can work really, really fast. That's my process. I do that and when we jump into Heroes and Monsters, I do start back to basics. And I think it's really funny to watch people go, oh yeah, I remember doing that. Oh, this is a lot easier. So I don't think acting has to be complicated. I mean, and there's different forms, and people have their different techniques and stuff. But I'm a basics guy. Pascal.
Cool. Yeah, Pascal. Anything you can add to that in terms of your sort of a basic, your fundamental approach?
Yeah. So the way I see it is that many actors who go through formal or informal training, whether they go to a formal school or not, is neither here nor there. But much of it is focused in a certain approach to. Hang on, I'm just letting somebody in. Much of it is focused on a certain approach to character and to a sort of style of acting, which is the methods have been adapted towards film and TV. Theatre is the sort of the other side of the coin, but even theatre has been affected by film and TV as well, and that the skills for nonverbal storytelling are often rather underserved by existing training systems. And certainly in the intro, but also in the Heroes and Monsters, what I try to do is to offer actors two things. One is an alternative perspective on what they believe acting is about, an alternative perspective. And that might, when I talk about that, I mean that, for instance, knowing that it's just your skeleton that's just being captured can blow some actors' minds, because they are so focused on the face and on close-ups. So that's what I mean by a different perspective. And then if that's the case, how do you still use every second to tell a story? And that's a different perspective. And then from that, the how, I start to put forward different exercises to illuminate the different perspective, but also to give actors the tools on how to start working in a particular way, or thinking about how they can improve their skills to be able to be what I would say a truly integrated actor, somebody whose connection between their mind and their body is instantaneous and responsive. Richard says fast work. Well, that's when that happens, is when there is no second guessing, there is no huge cognitive overload between you and your body. So as is often the theme with many of the teachers with Mocap Vaults, we all have the same challenge, and we have our different approaches to solve the same problem. How do you work quickly? How do you physically transform yourself? How do you uncouple yourself from a training that is focused largely on close-ups and film techniques? Those are the things that, particularly in the intro and in the Heroes and Monsters, I really dig into. By the time we get to the cinematics, I start bringing some of that stuff back. But certainly at the beginning, that's what I'm concentrating on.
So I don't know who wants to answer this question, but if you're not in a mocap suit until the cinematics class. So in our curriculum, the first two stages, the intro, the Heroes and Monsters 1, the Heroes and Monsters 2, they are in a rehearsal studio essentially. So if there's no mocap suit, isn't that just like acting? Isn't that just like an acting class? Does one of you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, acting is acting, and that's what we have to remember. So it doesn't matter whether you're in film, TV, theater, VR. I mean, acting is acting. It's just a different, you know, uh, stage or different medium that we're working in, and that's, everything has its rules. So, like in the mocap stage, we have our rules on what we can do when, with markers on our bodies. So I think that if you take that into consideration, acting is acting, and that your training is going to involve acting training, that's all you have to do is be a good actor. If you're a good actor, you're going to end up in the volume eventually. You're going to find you can't try to be a mocap actor, please. That's my biggest fear. So many people, I mean, mocap is addicting. You all know that. The minute you got your first taste, you're like, I just want to do this forever. But you can't rely on a career in just mocap.
But Richard, that's true. But we have all seen good actors fail in the volume. We have all seen them being intimidated by the reality of wearing Lycra, having nothing whatsoever to, relate to, rely on, props, etc. So why does that happen? What's kind of different about it? I'm just really trying to nail down what's the difference then. What's so difficult about it?
Pure imagination, improv. That it's a skill. I mean, voice actors are really good at filling in really, really fast dialogue, improving on this. But if I'm not recording your dialogue, now you need something else. So you need to have that physicalization to bring that character to life. Everybody's process is different. And so if you can't work fast, if you're not a good improver, those are the skills that you need to work on. Those are the things you need to be prepared for. So yes, I've seen incredible actors melt under the technology, and that's just something that only comes with practice and only comes with, doing this sometimes. It's everybody's process is different. As an instructor, when I'm watching my students, I'm looking for things that I think that they need to focus on. I can pull out certain elements of a performance, or a movement on somebody that I think that I can help them develop. That's our job as instructors, as teachers, is if we care about our students, that's what we're looking for. That's what we're trying to help them enhance. But it only works if they practice it,
Can I just pick up on that? Thank you for this notion of practice, because Pascal, you mentioned exercises, which I thought was an interesting word, particularly because we've got one of the questions we have here is, do you suggest any at-home exercises we should be doing to keep practicing? What are those exercises, and how might we guide people to be able to do work which develops what they've picked up at the classes, and how can they develop that themselves?
Well, I'm going to tie with the previous question as well, which is why do famous high-profile actors melt under the technology? And I think it's because if you've got to that point in film, TV, you've accepted that your mode of acting is focused on here. You're going to do a wide, and then you're going to come in, and then you're going to come in, and you adjust the scale of your performance according to that. And what you haven't done is practiced and trained a vital skill of nonverbal storytelling, nor have you practiced and trained proprioception and kinesthesia. So proprioception and kinesthesia is your sense of your body in space and your sense of your body's movement in space. When Richard takes on an archetype, there's things going on in his brain which knows exactly what part of his body is doing what and where. The shape, the silhouette, the breath, the way that he walks is it will be an incredible neurological and physical feat when you think of it. So that the point that you see him in the mocap suit is that, and you see that the cloud data, he is somebody else. He is turned into another creature. Now, that requires practice of skills which aren't frequently practiced in, camera work classes, for example, but are no less important and can be transferable. So, things like doing the washing up and then repeating the washing up, but miming it, trying to get exactly what you do with the washing up or any physical action. So if I'm drinking a cup of tea or coffee, as soon as I put the coffee mug down, I try again and try to exactly replicate physically what I've just done. you'll be surprised at how extraordinarily difficult it is. Washing up a plate, you do it so automatically when you've got the physical objects in your hands, but to mime it is using a different muscle, and that's the same muscle, proprioception kinesthesia, that is ideal for creating and transforming yourself physically. So there's one exercise. Another thing might be as simple as, I know Richard suggested this one, I might be stealing your thunder a bit, doing everything left-handed, or doing it with the opposite hand, because a lot of video games require that you use one hand, the right hand for everything. If you're left-handed, you won't be as capable unless you actually start doing things with your other hand. Walking around in different tempos in your house, walking around in your house, imagining you were outside. I mean, these are, again, this is going back to what Richard just said about it being about imagination. What can you do to train your sense of your body, your sense of your body's movement in space, and your imagination? What those are the three things that I think those exercises at home should all focus on.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Can I just pick you up on the concept of mime? Because I've always thought that mocap is not really about mime. It's more about, because you're going to be given an object, hopefully. Like if you're going to swing an axe, you're not going to be asked to mime an axe, because when you put that axe into a zombie's head for a video game, for example, it's going to look poor, isn't it? So
I should make a distinction then, which is this is an exercise. It's an exercise to just like running on a treadmill is to prepare you for the marathon, but it's not the same thing, right? So in the same way, the exercises that I would recommend at home are exercises. They're not to train you how to mime. They are to train you how to know what your body is doing in its position in a very fine way. And you can do these in big. You can copy somebody who's walking along the street, for example. That's another exercise that forces you to pay attention to what it is that you're doing and where your body is, and what happens when you change it, and how does that make you feel. These are all important exercises that you wouldn't necessarily have a one-to-one correlation in a mocap volume, but it will use the same skills that you're developing.
Great. We had quite a few. Richard, you want to chip in?
Well, I was going to say, because it's the holidays too, you're going to be with family members, you know, and the one thing I ask in my intro class is, can you walk like your mom or your dad?
Yeah.
So this will be the perfect holiday when you see your parents or when you're with your family member, is to try to watch one of them and bring that to life, because it is, that's your homework. That's your training right there. That is the fun stuff, you know, because I also like to, I think what we teach works, because I can't tell you how many times I get messages from students who are on a shoot who will text me or message me and say, oh my God, what we just did in the volume, we did in class. And that lets me know that we're teaching the right thing. You know, that's where we just did what we did in Heroes and Monsters 1. We just did that right now in the volume, and we're prepared for. And I was the only one who was taking a Mocap Vaults class, and I was prepared, and these three other actors didn't know what to do. That makes me proud of our process.
Just going back to your story about your idea of copying how your mum and dad walk. That's what I might bring that into reference with Gareth Taylor, who's our head of movement in the UK. Talks a lot about this concept of movement heritage, i.e. where do you get the way that you move from? And of course, if you go back to the source and you look at your parents and your family, you're going to find out a lot of answers. So that's probably quite an interesting exercise to forensically look at how your family walk. So quite a lot of people are coming from other areas of expertise. We've got people who are coming from dancing or from stunts. To what extent are the skills transferable, and what advice do you have for people who feel as though they're either skilled in dance or stunts and they want to get into acting, or are concerned about our actors who feel they don't have the experience of stunts? In terms of those skills, can you guys talk a little bit about that? What do you need to be a mocap actor? I guess how do you for a mocap performer, what's a successful mocap performer look like?
Well, I think we're a hybrid now. You know, I mean, you have action actors, you have actors, you know, you have voice actors as well, who have finally gotten out of the booth and realized they need their bodies as well. Knowing the difference between a cinematic and an in-game session and movement are completely different skill sets, because it's still acting, because you're always acting as the character. I like to think that in-game is still acting. It is never me turning the doorknob, it's my character turning the doorknob. And so knowing the difference between where you fit in game, where you have higher level of skill sets needed, martial arts, stunts, versus cinematics, where you're a concentrated actor. You have to be both. But who doesn't want a stunt double? I want a stunt double. So if you're an actor, concentrate on what you're good at, and then you know what? I'll get you a stunt double for your double backflip. It's the industry, it's fluid. The technology that we have now that makes it easier to capture more than one person, and to be able to have a variety of styles of movement. That's we can't have every job. You can't do everything. The technology has let us actually open the door to more people in this. Before it was we wanted to hire one person to do everything. Now we don't have to do that. So it goes back to being a good actor. If you're a stunt person, it's hard. Stunt people should be taking acting classes, just like voice people should be taking movement classes. That's our job. If we're going to be doing this, that's our training. That's what we're supposed to do, or be happy with where you are and stay concentrated in that lane. There is no easy answer, John. It's just so hard. I have been doing mocap for 21 years. And do you know how many of those years I've done voiceover in mocap? Very, very small amount. I'm not a voice actor. I'm a mocap, I'm a physical actor. I'm a monster. I'm an actor, but I don't get all the voiceover jobs. And I'm fine with that because I love using my body and I love using, creating my characters that way. So it doesn't kill me that I don't get a voiceover job.
And how about dancers, Richard? I've got some specific questions from dancers, so I thought I'd chuck that in. Are there other jobs for people who can just dance, or would it be useful for them to have some acting chops at the same as well?
Definitely need acting chops. But the best thing about having a dancer is they can recreate choreography a lot faster. They have full control over their bodies. That's some of the things that. And you're like, where are dancers used? Dancers are used a lot in demos for mocap because they look good, they can move, they can show variety in movement. Very rarely do I see a lot of actors doing demos like, say, at SIGGRAPH or GDC or E3. You don't hire actors to stand there and monologue in a mocap suit. You hire dancers or martial artists, people who can move around to show off the technology and what the suit can do. But, dancers should be actors as well. Dancers usually wait till late in their career when they can't dance anymore, when they're injured, then to try to become actors. Why theater actors are great because they're triple threats: sing, dance, and act. And that's just part of the evolution. Dancers are really great with choreography. What I'm lucky working on Rogue Company, working on games like Apex Legends that have dance emotes, that's who I hire. I want dancers to be able to bring those dance emotes to life. So it is, it's like Guitar Hero. When Guitar Hero was big, there was a guy who was purely a face lip syncer. He did probably 90% of Guitar Hero because he learned every song that was in Guitar Hero's repertoire and he mocapped the face for everything. Dancers are, they have their certain lane and it's just about finding, but I see dancers used more in demos than anything.
Pascal, anything you'd like to say? I think you're...
Can you hear the background noise at all? I hope not. I turned out the game and got people singing in the background. Yeah, I would say that with dancers, I was involved in a casting process. And we did end up choosing somebody with a dance background because we needed that level of physical control for what was needed. But that makes me think, well, be a great actor first with specialisms that you enjoy doing anyway. I think that would probably be my real advice, because, for instance, there's something that I know that's been cast that really needs circus performers. I'm not a circus performer, but if I were, and I was a good actor, and I knew about motion capture, I might be a shoo-in for this job. So and the same with dancers. You're saying, well, dancers are used because they have that particular skill. That's your in, but particularly with dancers, you need to get range and physical range. And if you've been trained as a dancer, often you have difficult with weight. You have difficult, as in, when I say weight, I mean Laban weight, as in strength into the ground, mass, that sense of mass. That's one issue. And the other is being aesthetically pleasing. As a dancer, you're trained to hit certain shapes. That's why you're employed in the booth at GDC or wherever it is, but not necessarily in the volume, because in the volume you need range. You need to be able to physically be ugly and find that enjoyable and natural. And that, for many dancers, is a bit of a block at first. And it takes training and repetition and sort of an open-mindedness and open-bodiedness towards your sense of self and what is aesthetically pleasing. Yeah.
Thank you. A quick question from Yorgos, who sounds as though he's a technical person in mocap. Do technical people have any advantage on as becoming mocap performers? I guess this is also a question for animators and technical people who already have mocap experience and understanding. Any tips for them in terms of getting in, or do they just need to go through that basic idea of becoming a good actor, Richard?
I think technicians and great animators do study acting. I think that with the pandemic proved what happened. We took inertial suits, studios took inertial suits and sent them to their animators instead of actors and said, go ahead and animate what you need. And, I've put on the suit, do your own performance and do the animation, instead of sending the suit to an actor who didn't know how to run the system. So, I mean, some of the best animators are actors. I think, they have that background. And then some of them, aren't. They're technically savvy. It's a fine line. I think every animator could benefit from taking an acting class, because then they understand how to talk to actors. We're still in that weird position where, who are our directors in game? There's not a lot of mocap directors, cinematic directors. They come from the animation side, and I think that's if you can handle the technical and you can prove yourself as an actor. I mean, that's who we're competing against as well. I just want the best performance.
Yeah. I've got some questions sort of from a newbie angle. So what's the first two things you should focus on if you know nothing about mocap, games, characters? What are the things you should focus on? Any advice for, and then, yeah, I'll ask that first. What do you if you're starting literally from zero, where do you start?
You have to know what mocap is used for. I mean, if you know that it's being used in the video game world, if it's being used in animation, if it's being used, you have to be a fanboy and a fangirl of the genre. If you do not know who Darth Vader is, I can guarantee you 40 other people sitting next to you do. And that's who you're competing with. So you have to become a fanboy and a fangirl of this genre. You have to understand that. And if you don't, then that's that's a choice. But if you don't know, who R2-D2 is, if you don't know who Nathan Drake is, that's the disadvantage you're putting yourself in. And that's we have to be sponges when we're working in mocap. We have to be able to find these characters. It's research. That's part of our homework. I always say that getting a job is easy. It's all the auditioning and all the research that we have to do beforehand. That's the real job, because then you should be able to walk into a job and be comfortable and ready to go. So for me,
where do you find this information? Okay, so Richard's painting a picture that we need to become kind of experts. Is that something you'd agree with, Pascal? Is that what you'd say to newbies?
I think it would be like approaching anything as a newbie. I don't think the rules are particularly different. if I'm going to learn how to sail, do I put myself in a sailing boat tomorrow? No. I start looking at what's sailing like. I start looking at YouTube videos about people that are have gone through a similar journey. I watch what people do on a sailing boat in order to figure out, is that something I'd like to do? Because really, any decision that you make about pursuing something should factor in the enjoyment of learning and failing at it. Because there's no guarantee at the other side, for a start. And so I would suggest looking at it like you would with any big decision in your life. Research, understand what it is that's going on in the medium. If you're an actor in other fields, absolutely look at Troy Baker, look at YouTube videos of people in the mocap volume, compare that with cinematics, listen and watch and note your own reactions. Do you find it interesting? Are you just thinking about it in terms of, oh, I want to get that job, so I'm going to be famous? Is that what you're after? Well, then maybe this is not the right avenue. I mean, I'm not criticizing that opinion, but maybe that's not the right approach. So I think the idea of researching and taking your time to really understand the nature of the thing that you're going to go into, and then looking for classes, I think those are the two things that I would say: research and then train.
And learn how to sail, just going on your metaphor.
You never know what's going to be used in the volume.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. So what about advice for stage actors working on their first ever mocap project? What are the do's and don'ts for them? Or would you answer the same thing, which is do your research and look at some videos and get to know?
Don't touch the truss.
That was
Smith. Yes. Actually, just for everybody, Hunter asked the question, but do I touch the truss? Very, very funny.
Should we explain what that means, by the way, just for people who've not been in a volume and
my LA students know what "do not touch the truss" means. The very first rule of Mocap Vaults is do not touch the truss where the cameras are hanging, because if you shake a camera, you're going to screw up the calibration, and then you're going to be responsible for shutting the shoot down for another 30 minutes to recalibrate. It's always just being aware of the technology. But in general, John, I think stage actors kind of have a one-up when it comes to VR, because in VR we're going back to stage acting. We're going back to no cuts like in film and TV. We're extending scenes so that when you're in the headset, I can look over here and come back to this scene and come back. I mean, so when you're used to doing a play, if you're used to not leaving the stage for 15, 20 minutes or 2 hours and staying in character that long, that's a plus. What you have to learn is the technical things that be careful about blocking and including markers, crossing your arms for too long and things like that. So that's where all of this training as actors is. Acting is just acting. That is a pure example. But having somebody who has stage background is great, because you're constantly not dealing with a cut. And I think as a performer, that's the one thing we crave is, don't let me stop performing, for a camera angle. And that's why mocap is pretty incredible in that sense.
I'd also say that many stage actors, perhaps in North America, associate improvisation with comedy. And I would say that that could be one of the skills that stage actors lack, is in dramatic improvisation. So that's where I would look at as a potential gap. The scale and the ability to physically be very present in in full-bodied performance. That is something that is part of stage work for sure. But the improvisation side of it, that's definitely a part of motion capture, which is really important. And VR even more so, because if the technology fails, you're going to be tap dancing and have to still pump out the narrative and still tell the story, despite the fact that your head has just gone over on one side and your arm is floating somewhere up in the sky. And you got to still make that work. And some classically trained actors find that difficult,
I'm going to push things along. I'm just aware of time now. I want to talk a little bit about the Mocap Vaults classes, because I think there are some interesting potential questions there. So it can be hit and miss to get a spot, as probably some people will have found out. There's quite a lot of competition, particularly in the US. Why don't we teach it all in one intensive? Finish with a scene for a show reel. Why not do that? I mean, what's the reason for our sporadicness and for our classes being split up into those different sort of skill sets that we teach, culminating in the summit? Want to take one of you? Want to take that?
I'll have a shot. Oh no.
No, go Pascal. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're treating actors with the respect that we would have ourselves. And what I mean by that is this, is that if we believe that the techniques and the perspectives that we are opening you up to require time for you to integrate into your performance, pick which tools work in order to achieve that goal. If we throw you into a mocap volume and do an intensive, the question I then have is, well, how effective is that teaching? How deep does it go? Because I know that certainly after the intro and after each class, students go away and they need time to integrate what they've learned. It doesn't all happen at once. And there is definitely in society at large a desire to get learning done quickly. How quickly can I learn this thing? Tick it off. Yes, got it. Check. But really, the deep work that is required over time means that we should not be doing intensive courses. Because at the same time that you're learning these techniques at Mocap, you're also learning other techniques in whatever other classes you're taking, as well as training and improving your acting technique with even more classes. It's the whole thing is required to progress together. It's not a question of some bolt-on sort of technique class. It's a terrible business model, to be honest, because it means that we have to constantly be priming the pump to have enough people to go through from one stage to the other, to the other, to the other. But the advantage of that is by the time we get to cinematics or we get to a summit, we know that everybody has been through this process, has taken time and has returned to the class and returned to progress. So they are serious people who have spent serious time developing themselves as performers and as actors, who are arriving at the summit ready to do their best. Whereas if I just open it up and say, okay, it's going to be 1 week and at the end of the week, we're going to capture a cinematic scene, you might get the worst cinematic scene that you could possibly do, and you've paid for it, you put it up, and then people see substandard work which you really don't want to be showing yet because you're not ready. If you're going to show work, make sure you're ready. No animator puts out substandard stuff and says, look at my fine work. You know, they're being judged on their animation skills. So in the same way, we don't want to give actors a false idea of what it takes. And we want to be able to genuinely teach them in a process that puts craft and puts skill first, and not an idea of a quick fix or a fast return. There you go. It's quite forceful there. Sorry.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree. And also part of it is when you're taking with us, we care about you. You know, I can tell you people who have taken Heroes 1 and then they haven't done one exercise for, I mean, the pandemic proved it, you know, CQB 1, Mark's class, took a year before the CQB 2 could happen, and nobody practiced. Nobody picked up their gun for a year in their house, and then they were ready to jump into CQB 2. That's what I'm talking about, the practice and being prepared. You know, it is. We want to try to get as many classes as we can right away, but if you're not practicing it, it shows. I see it immediately. And so we're not in it for like the quick buck. I don't want to take your money. I want you to succeed. We if you look at the screen of the people that have worked in this business that are still coming back and look for, you know, have questions for us. That's really important to me. I want you to be the best that you can possibly be, because when you put my name and you put John's name and Pascal's name on your resume, I don't want people, you took from the Mocap Vaults. That shouldn't be the reaction. It's really, I care sometimes too deeply and too much for our students. But I want you to be the best that you can be, because imagine your first AAA title, that is the most incredible feeling ever. It is something that you are going to bring to life in pop culture it's something, you've experienced it with your voiceover work. You've experienced it with your film and TV work. It's something that stands the test of time that you can be so proud of. And that's, we didn't get this training, and that's kind of where I think it needs to go. I want to change. I want to train the next generation. I think that was my calling. That's what this has all led up to for me, and that's really, really important to me. And I think that every teacher, Gareth and Paul and Ollie, and this is what we're not doing it because you want me to have a class every week. I could do it, but also I'm still working myself. I'm still creating, and that's hard. When we put out a schedule, we think about it long and hard, and it's tough on us. So that's it. Wow.
Right. I just like to add a couple of things myself, which is one thing we always say, which is we're not a drama school. We're not an acting school specifically. We are here as signpost holders. We want to help you get work in motion capture and improve performances on the whole in motion capture. That's not just with actors, that's with animators and directors. We want to inspire a generation and we want to up the quality. But we can't pretend to do that as to take the place of a drama school or a film school, or much as I'd like in some ways to be running a kind of more intensive or at least a more full course. That's not happening yet. We have, I have to say, in the last 7 years, started to notice a kind of sea change, particularly in drama schools in the UK. And Richard, I don't know whether this is true in the US, but I'm getting a sense that it is. I think that drama schools and acting courses are beginning to realize that there is work out there which is not just on stage and on screen, but it's on green screen, it's on virtual performances, on animation, it's on voiceover, it's on games. They're beginning to get that sense. So we're starting to go into drama schools now, particularly drama schools in the UK, and starting to do classes. The understanding and the enthusiasm of the teachers and the people that are on the course are always really essential, because if they don't have a kind of sense of respect for the medium, it will never happen. And of course, there is an awful lot of people who are, let's face it, they're pretty snobby about acting for stage being the most important thing, and even acting for screen being a kind of subsidiary element of acting, which is I think it's going to change. It's taking a while. The other thing to say is that we are all professionals. All the teachers that work with the Mocap Vaults, do other things as a day job or are constantly working on other projects. So we have availability issues. That's something that is always difficult. I know, Richard, you could talk about wanting to fill more classes, but you've got a lot of work on, as far as I understand it, doing your other work, directing, casting, acting, mentoring people. So that's another issue for us. Just wanted to say a little bit about the effects of the pandemic on the Mocap Vaults, because they were pretty seismic. We are still playing catch up with our classes. We are behind the US in the UK with our classes. We haven't yet run a cinematics class for about 2 years. It means our last summit was in 2019, both in the UK and in the US. We hope to run summits early or mid 2022 in both UK and US. We are talking with Pascal, who's developing the program in Canada, about what might happen there. So Pascal, at the moment, you've done intros and Heroes and Monsters 1, is that correct? Have you done Heroes and Monsters 2 yet?
No, we haven't done Heroes and Monsters 2 yet.
That'll be next, hopefully, in one of the either Toronto or Montreal.
Well, the idea is that I teach every other month in Montreal and Toronto the intros and Heroes and Monsters 1 and 2 across 2022 as much as I can.
Right.
So that by the end of 2022 I can move into cinematics.
Yeah.
And I will have built up a relationship with the studio to start discussing a summit. That's the idea.
Fantastic. And we are, as I said earlier on, we are now going to start classes in Atlanta. Our next territories we would like to start classes are New York City, and we are also talking to a studio in Poland, in Warsaw. I know that doesn't answer the question for our friends here from Austria and Hungary, but we are very much based upon demand. So we really need to, the way that our model works is we need full classes essentially in order to make our classes viable. So we are going to be going to places where we think we can get enough students together to build a kind of momentum in our classes. So that's our ethos. We had one question about someone from Australia. I think that's correct. Or was it, sorry, was it Austria? Apologies. I know that we've had interest from Australia. That's why I'm mentioning it though. It's the same question really. For Yorgos in Australia, Austria, sorry, is that there is an issue about trying to find 12, because most of our classes work on the basis of 12. Here is a Monster sometimes is bigger, but generally our classes of 12 is what we're looking for. And the other thing that's very clear is that our classes succeed best in places in which there is a mocap industry. So LA is our most, that's always going to be our busiest territory because LA is where most of the work is, or at least in the US, that's the case. London, there's quite a bit of work in London. So we're getting classes going in London. We have, I don't know if any of you know this, we've run classes now in Liverpool and Newcastle. Liverpool and Manchester, there is a kind of beginnings of a sense of a mocap industry that's viable. There are quite a few actors in Manchester, particularly in the UK. We know from Canada that there is work in Montreal, so we're looking at Montreal, and there's also some in Vancouver. So I guess we should be long-term thinking about that. But as you can see, our ethos is to try and go where there is an industry, and that's where we're going to really be making strides. And then outside of that, as the industry begins to develop, then maybe there will be opportunities for us to get classes going in other places. But I'm afraid in the interim, it means that people who are living in Austria, Hungary, Poland, etc., although Poland we're trying to set up classes, will need to travel. It's an unfortunate reality of the kind of centralization of the industry. For example, we were teaching in a school, film school in Germany. Great students, fantastic animations going on, a really great ingenuity, but the industry is quite small there. So it's difficult for us to put together a kind of curriculum and get a head of steam going in a country in which the industry, from a point of view of production, is still in early days. So that's just to try and give you a sense of where we're at with the Mocap Vaults and why things aren't run maybe as regularly as you want to, or in the territories you want them to go. There was one question about, could we run weekly classes, for example? It would be great to be able to be that prolific, but I don't know whether we'd fill the classes. That's one of our, and Richard, maybe you could, but then I don't think you'd be able to teach them. Pascal, sorry, you were going to say something.
Well, I was going to say that even if you have to travel, it might be worthwhile, because certainly in the next sort of 5-10 years, VR and small outfits that use XNs and use different forms of smaller scale capture are going to need actors that are good at improvisation and who are physically self-aware. I mean, in VR, whether you tilt your head one way or the other can actually be quite expressive. You've only got three modes of three modes of communication, or things that you can, your hands and the tilt of your head, and also the bobbing up and down of your body. Now it's very different from motion capture for game, for sure, but it still requires you as an actor to know what is your body communicating physically, and how is that consistent with the vocal message. So even if your local area does not have a motion capture studio, I would say in most major cities there will be a burgeoning animation of small groups of people creating things that require actors, and also the skills that you learn are still transferable to film, TV, and theatre. I did a film called See For Me, which is coming out in January. The trailers just dropped. And there's this long sort of tracking shot. It's an external looking into the house where I'm having to walk from one room to another. And I know for a fact that had I not worked in the mocap volume and learnt about things like, learnt about what my body was doing, I would not have been able to consistently match the pace throughout the when I entered into each room. They were different takes, but I had to match the pace. It was in dark lighting, so I had to know about silhouettes. So these are techniques directly derived from my experience in motion capture being reapplied to film in a way that 10 years ago I wouldn't have thought of. So that's just to say that although the locations may be contingent on available work in motion capture, the skills that are taught in Mocap Vaults classes are still transferable to your local market.
Pascal, can I just tease out something here? Pascal and I have been working on a project which will soon be announced, where we've been doing some research into various mindsets and ideas in mocap. And one of those was to ask people about what was going to happen in the future. And can you give people a kind of sense? Because one of the senses at the moment is it's all about geography. It's like, I'm in Austria, I'm in the wrong place. What can I do? I'm in wherever, I'm in the north of England and I want to work in mocap. What can I do? I think there was some stories that we both heard, which are kind of quite hopeful about what the future might bring in terms of bringing those geographical areas closer to each other.
Obviously, I can't talk about specifics because we're still bound by NDA. So, but what I can say is even from recent experience is that there's a studio that I know here that because of the pandemic started outsourcing a lot of stuff. So then they realized they didn't need to have so many people actually on site. I know somebody else who is releasing a game who is a team of 3 people, and they're releasing it on Sony, and that's just 3 people, right? I went to a VR conference recently, and everybody turned up, and they had hand tracking. They even had mouth tracking as well. It's quite possible that virtual performances will be required, so it doesn't really matter where you are. In fact, where you are might help because you're in a different time zone. With all these things to do with the advances of technology, it may seem that some doors shut. There's more procedural animation. We don't need actors as much to do X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, other doors are opening, which are more to do with the fact that the technology is becoming free or inexpensive. The access to it is becoming democratized. And that the sheer logistics of putting something together no longer needs 3,000 people or 2,000 or 1,000. We're talking about teams of a handful of people that can create things. And they need creatives that understand the medium, and that includes actors.
I was going to say, one of the things that I'm running across right now that I'm training an actor for a film, but I went back and because I know I'm going to be dealing with this a lot. I'm training him in micro expressions and things to do with his face and head and eyes and eyebrows. And the first thing I did was send him a facial fax to practice, eyebrow raises, puffing cheeks, all of that stuff that we have to do for face capture. I sent him that to work on his facial, just so he can start to get control of his face for certain things. And that's something that we could easily get to our students that is something you can practice in front of a mirror. If you want homework, I'll give you facial facts homework. Can you raise each eyebrow individually? Can you all of those 50, look at Pascal. I mean, like all of these things that can be your homework so that you're prepared. Because I saw a question over here, what happens when you get into a scanning situation for full body scan or facial scan and things like that. That's the stuff that you want to be prepared for, so you're not blindsided by it. And that's something that we can drop it on the Facebook page, like the dynamics fax, or I mean, there are multiple versions of a facial fax that you can sit through, and that's part of the homework. That's something. But knowing that technology, knowing what's coming down the pike is also, it's also being trained in an inertial suit. knowing how an inertial suit works versus markers in a studio. That's, you know, some of the other things, because the technology is out there. And, you know, I just think that's what we have to be prepared for, anything, you know.
Cool. Listen, guys, I want to start wrapping up because I'm aware that we're now over the hour, but I want to start going a little bit into casting, because I know people want to know about kind of orientating themselves towards the possibility of getting work. And I'm going to make these questions kind of more general rather than specific. It's a nice question here, which is, this is from Gadita Singh in Manchester. My question would be, what's the best way to position myself to enable me to get more work in this industry? So it's kind of a general question, but it's about attitude, I think, which is I think probably the best way to go, rather than us answering specific questions like, you know, how do I get a job? But how about positioning yourself? What do you need to do to position yourself to get work?
I don't know how it works there. For here, I mean, everything is under such tight NDAs that we don't know what's being cast and put out there. I mean, right now, like through Backstage Casting, LA Casting, things are starting to go out for more game stuff. Voiceover agents are getting more of those auditions than in general. So it's sort of, that's the hard part, is the still mainstream doesn't treat the video game casting like they do film and TV. And by the time they're choosing their actors on these projects, these games have been in development for a year or more. The actors are the last thing that come in, because they've got to develop all these levels and the playing, you know, mechanics of the game. So by the time a casting comes out, normally here, they're going to go directly to the motion capture studio, unfortunately. And they're asking those studios, hey, can you recommend people? Or it's all in the network of who you know. That's the unfortunate part of the business here. So how can you prepare? Make sure that all your materials, your show reels are up to date. Make sure your resumes and you know, I prefer, with my classes, I set up a way that I prefer to have my submissions put in on a PDF with a headshot, resume, links, you know, creating a links page, something like that. You just have to be ready, because when something does drop in my lap, it happens really, really fast, and I need to be able to send it out really, really fast. So it's.
Does it help to have an agent, Richard? Do you need an agent in the US?
In the US here, there are no mocap agencies. I know there's the mocap agency in London. There is no mocap agency here. We have voiceover agents that do get the game work and stuff like that. I mean, some regular agencies are going to get some things, but we do have casting directors like what's her name? Shoot, I have two in my brain right here. That Ivy Eisenberg does casting for video games. It's finding those casting. Ivy Eisenberg, Julia Bianco Schoenfeld from the Help Network, they cast games. And actually, I know that Julia has helped cast like the new Batman game, or you know, that's shot in Toronto, I believe, Pascal. So I find networking through LinkedIn a lot easier for me to find out who's connected to what games.
Yeah, interesting you say LinkedIn. I've heard stories of actors getting approached by indie developers who have been tracking what they're putting out on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is quite an interesting platform to be on as a mocap performer, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, and just to answer quickly in terms of the situation here, I mean, yes, that contacts thing is important. And for example, that mocap agency, I think, is very much aligned with Centroid Studio, the one in the UK, the mocap agency. But so it is kind of who you know, the networks do work, but also a lot of jobs are put out on Spotlight and go through agents and casting directors. So there is a kind of mixture of work. As mocap has been taken more seriously, it becomes more mainstream and it's being cast in kind of more classical ways. So there's a kind of both sides of it are working. How about Canada, Pascal? Have you got any? How would you answer that question about?
Well, about the positioning, it makes me think of how the acting profession or actors now are being requested to have a certain kind of brand. because if you're putting stuff out on social media, and you know that casting directors and you know that producers and you know that people in the industry look at that, at least that's your hope, then there's a temptation to go along with brand. I am the kind of actor that does this kind of stuff. And there is a merit in that. But here's the question. If you look at Ace Ruel, you know, he's a great actor, and he specializes in exobionics, so these additions to his body so he can portray animals with longer limbs, for example, creatures with tails and so on. And on LinkedIn, he's been really good at putting stuff of him doing stuff outside. That's his speciality, and that goes back to be a great actor, but do something, specialize in something that you enjoy. The fact that he specializes in something which is directly related to mocap allows him to be the guy you now think of. You know, the same with Terry Notary. I mean, he's the guy you think of for a certain kind of range of performances. So when you say, well, how should I position myself? It's a dangerous one if you're going to say, well, I'm going to position myself in such a way as I am perceived as being a mocap actor without having mocap credits. That's tricky, because what you may be doing is excluding yourself from other lines of work that educate you as importantly as any mocap job would. So when I sort of think, well, how do I position myself? Position yourself as a great actor, first of all, perhaps a character actor. That might be useful. There's this English sense of being a character actor is not necessarily something which is either looked down upon, nor is it something which is only associated with English actors in American movies. A character actor is associated with being having range, being able to play very different types to you, physically, psychologically, and emotionally. If you are that kind of actor, then you are very handy in all media. You may be of a certain type in film, for example, but you can do theatre. You can also do a great range in motion capture, and people will see you walk in and know you have that range and know you have that capability. So when I think of branding and I think of positioning, it's the kind of actor that you are that I think is more important than specifically focusing on motion capture as being your goal and your target.
And might I extend your earlier story, Richard, or your earlier message that you should become an expert into the realm of casting? So, for example, the more you know about the industry, the more you know what studios are doing, what they're making, the more you do that research, the more you try and go and make contacts yourself and go to conferences, go to GDC or to the different games conferences, those kind of things, that you're more likely to be able to get yourself into the room. I mean, do those kind of things really help?
I think that everything is, timing, right place, right time, who you run into, how, if you come at somebody, at an animator, like on LinkedIn, and it's like, I'm an actor and I do this and I do that, they immediately go, okay, hold on. You have to know how to read your audience, and you have to know how to connect with somebody on a human level first. I get blasted a lot with, I want to be a mocap actor, and that's the only message they send to me. And like, how am I supposed to react to that? So does everybody else. I mean, it's how you approach somebody. I will reach out if I like a project, if I watch a cinematic that I really, really like, I will reach out to somebody on the team that's worked on it and just say, I love this project. This was amazing. Congratulations. And that's how I start my conversation. It's all in how you treat people. And then you end up becoming friends with an animator that ends up putting you in your project. There are thousands and thousands of people competing for one job, and so how are you going to stand out, or how are you? And I mean, animators need friends too, So it is really about that. But going to some places like GDC, going to some of the conventions, SIGGRAPH, and just SIGGRAPH is great to learn the technology. Vicon has a booth there. Everybody has a booth there with the technology, and then you can approach them from that aspect and say, hey, I'm up to doing demos with you, that kind of stuff too. You have to be creative in your marketing.
There's some really good stuff, I think, that we can learn from the notion of what acting is. And I think acting is really about understanding other people, understanding your character, and having empathy. So on a sort of very sort of profound level, having a real sense of trying to understand how other people tick. And it's something that I often find myself saying in these situations, which is, I think that's really the skill that you need to develop as an actor in the way that you operate with your career. You have to try and understand what people are looking for. You have to understand how animators' minds work, and directors' minds, and casting directors. What are they looking for? They don't need a desperate person who lacks skills. They're looking for someone who's going to be a grown-up in the room, who's going to sort out their problem, and is going to offer a skill set that they're looking for. And as long as you appreciate and understand that and respect that, and you do that work. And then the other thing I think we talk a lot about in our classes is about having curiosity. So we're going from those ideas of copying your parents' walk, etc. Having real curiosity into what it is that people are, an imagination, what it is they're looking for. And I think if you can use those skills of empathy and curiosity in your explorations as trying to get work, those things get you a long way. And that also extends into things like show reels and how you sell yourself and how you write emails, you know, how you approach people, how you go up to people like Richard and say, hey, I want to be a mocap actor. Think about the impact of those words. So I think all of those things are really sort of important lessons to think about. I mean, I have it the same as a director. I'm a director, you know, I have to try and work out, how do I get a job on this high-end TV or this movie or this game that I'm trying to get into? I have all the same problems. In fact, they never go away, it seems to me, in this industry. They're just at a slightly different level. You kind of always you're getting over a bunch of foothills, thinking that right in front of you there will be a great view, and maybe you'll look down into valleys and look down on, and all that happens is there are more foothills, and they're getting higher and higher and higher. In my experience, I don't think I'm ever going to reach the top. So I think this is just a sort of question of degree, really. We are all struggling to get up the next rung in the ladder. I think all of us are in that situation. I think we're all just kind of we're all doing it, you know.
Yeah, I see Louisa just put mocap is least about ego, and I think that speaks a lot to what you've both said. Really, is that if you're curious and you're genuine and you're authentic and you're interested in the subject, and you're and if somebody says, look, you know, I just need somebody to come in and do a couple of walks, and you've just come off a big TV show, and you're like, no, that's not what I'm going to do. No, that's not the kind of person that's going to work in the mocap volume. The kind of person that's going to end up in the mocap volume is somebody that is a collaborator, is part of a team, that has the wherewithal to bring the character to life and make that, you know, the aspect of their job they have ownership over, but as part of a team. And even the way that you approach somebody at a Vicon booth at GDC, if that's who you are, you're curious about what they're doing, and they say, so what are you up to? You say, well, because I've been looking into this, and I really love creature work, and I did this course with Terry Notary, and he did then there, and you have this, and so does that really show them? Ask them. Suddenly, it's not about you trying to get a job. It's about two people with a common interest finding out about each other, and if you're ready, and if you've really lived it, and this is your interest, you will ooze enthusiasm. You will be the person that people want to work with, and they will remember you. But if you're just saying, you know, I want a job, how can you give me a job? That's instantly boom, no. You know?
Yeah.
I also want to say that, you know, this is part of your homework. There have been a ton of new information released in podcasts, the Vicon podcast, you know, I mean, Bethany, you know, mentioned too. It is Victoria Atkins' podcast. She has now done 3 seasons where she has interviewed a full range of people, you know, including me. And in those podcasts, in the people that she's talking to, they are giving you information on who does what, and who she'll tell you, oh, so-and-so does casting for this. She's interviewed, you know, Julia. So that's part of the homework. you know, I'm sorry. I hope I never have to tell another Scooby-Doo history story of how I got started. You guys should know it by now. But it's like those podcasts, that's part of your homework. You can learn so much stuff about the other people in the industry and connection, because she did an interview with an animator who was like, yeah, you can send me questions. And where do you get, you know, an open invitation like that from somebody in the industry? That's part of, but you got to listen to those podcasts, and that's the homework.
And the fact is that even though he says that, the vast majority of people listening won't
never do it. Yep.
Well, look, on that note, because we did open ourselves up to questions tonight, I think we've come to a nice moment where we've really started to talk about kind of a life attitude, kind of a sense of how you might approach this on a conceptual, on a life sort of model. And I think that's probably a good note to end. Unless you guys want to say anything to close, I sort of feel as though we've come to a nice moment. I think we've covered all our bases, and I hope that everyone's found this useful. Pascal, is there anything you want to tell us about in terms of housekeeping at the end of this?
Well, let's think. First of all, make sure that you are regularly checking in. Make sure that you're subscribed. If you are new to Mocap Vaults, make sure that you're subscribed. We do have your emails now. We know if you haven't had a Mocap Vaults class yet, so we will email you when new classes come up. In Montreal, there are still 2 places left. Are there any other classes which still have spots, Richard?
No, I'm going to try to do one more workout class before the end of the year, just for the LA students, because you know what it's like. It's hysterical to see people they bookmark the Mocap Vaults and stand by, because the minute we announce it, just we sell out so fast, which I'm honored for, and I thank you guys for that. It's an incredible, you know, it's an incredible thing to be able to sell out every class that we do. I mean, and to try to get more into there. And I also wanted to say, like, the fact that I'm going to Atlanta to teach, you know, 2 classes, that became a real thing, because people flew in from Atlanta to take my class. People are flying in all over the place to come to LA to take the class. And then by being boots on the ground in Atlanta, we were able to get the class started there, because Atlanta's going to be building a new Mocap volume. I believe Imaginarium's coming in there.
Yep.
And we want to get our students prepared, like, so that the minute Imaginarium opens the door, they can say, hey, I've been training, I'm ready to go. I mean, the Atlanta guy, I mean, one of our students, I am teaching at his dojo. Like, he said, I have a space, come, we can find you 12 people easily. I sold 2 classes out within 2 hours, because they're ready, because of the Marvel movies are there, things like that. So, like, if you are in a city and you can be boots on the ground for us and help us find a location, and to say, hey, I can get 12 actors that want this training, then Pascal will go there. I mean, you know, John will go. We're asking for your help if you think it's, you know, if you can get the crowd or the group.
But importantly, I think you need to link it with the industry. And that's why, for example, Atlanta, I'm convinced that's why it sold out so quick, because there are studios and there's work happening there. There are new studios being built. New York's, I hope, it's going to be similar. We're hoping that we can have similar, because there is some work in New York beginning to build.
Yeah, we are going to be going to New York for sure. We're just trying to figure out the date at the moment. I'm just seeing a note up here.
Yeah, and Silver Spoon is there, but they're overbooked. They just opened up a new studio here. Silver Spoon has an LA division. They're starting here because of Alter Ego, I believe. So, you know, I mean, they are popping up, and they're all also relying on new technology in the inertial suits.
Yeah. So the generally speaking, stay tuned. We are doing our best to fill the year with as many classes as possible and catch up with the lost time that was stolen away from us by COVID. So yeah, keep aware. We will be sending emails out to give you a heads up when classes are coming. But we're looking forward to seeing you all.
And Pascal and me are looking forward to announcing our project. We can't say anything about it, Pascal, but we are looking forward to announcing our joint project.
Right. The Game Awards are is it the 9th or the 12th?
9th, I think.
The 9th. So the the Video Game Awards will be there, and we know there's announcements coming there. And also, you know, we have one of our students is nominated for Best Actress, so that's pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Who's that, Richard? Let's name check her.
Maggie Robertson for Resident Evil Village. Yes, and you know and also I know 12 Minutes is nominated, and that was a game that Hunter and I got to work on with Caitlin Hudson, so that's being nominated. So that's another thing that you can follow, reach out to, you know, and keep track of and vote. All right. All that fun stuff.
Well, listen, on that note, thank you everyone for this evening. I am very grateful for your time and for joining us from your far-flung locations. We wish you all a very Merry Christmas, season's greetings, etc. And thanks, Pascal, for putting this together, because you organised this. And thank you very much for you guys make this happen. So love to you all.
Yay.
Yeah. Good night and good day, and whatever time of day it is with you, goodbye.
I'm now ending the meeting for all.
Yes, see some of you soon.